I hadn't planned on being here. My reservation was for the city's big chain hotel, a perfectly average room in a perfectly average building across from the convention center where my client meetings would be held. But some glitch, likely, a misclick or a technical error, left me standing at the front desk of a sleepy, independent hotel 2 blocks away, gripping my suitcase handle with forced calm while the receptionist typed furiously on her outdated keyboard. "I'm really sorry," she said, not for the first time. "There's only one room left, but, well, there's been a double booking. We're not sure how, but someone else was checked in under the same reservation earlier this afternoon." "Great," I muttered, pinching the bridge of my nose. "You're both checked in under the same company account." "That might be why," she added. "It's a 2-bedroom, if that helps. Just for tonight. We can try to get you something else tomorrow." I didn't have the energy to argue. My back ached from travel. My phone was at 6%, and I hadn't eaten since the granola bar at the airport. "Fine," I sighed. "Just for the night." She handed me the key card with an apologetic smile, and I trudged upstairs. The door clicked open, and there he was. He was sitting on the edge of the bed closest to the window, scrolling his phone, one long leg crossed over the other. The suitcase beside him was sleek and dark gray, matching his slim fit button-up, half untucked in that casual way some people pull off without effort. "Hey," he said, glancing up. Then he blinked. We both froze. "Wait. Miles?" he asked, brows lifting. "Miles Renner?" Oh no. I knew that voice, that mouth, that sharp, slanted grin. "Luca?" I asked, but I already knew it was him. Luca Hart. Of course it was him. The last time I'd seen him, we were 22, sitting shoulder to shoulder on the roof of a frat house during senior week, our legs swinging off the edge while we talked about the future like it was some abstract puzzle we could solve with a few beers and enough time. I remembered how close he sat. I remembered the buzz of something unspoken, something daring, pressing between us like an electrical current. Neither of us wanted to touch first. And now here, he was older, sharper, somehow even more confident, still with that same maddening glint in his eye. "Well, this is unexpected," he said, standing up. "Didn't know you worked with Silver and Finch." "Freelance," I said quickly. "They brought me in last minute. Design consulting." He nodded. "Marketing. I'm presenting at the conference. Guess someone merged our hotel bookings. That's kind of hilarious." "I'm not laughing," I muttered. He chuckled and stepped back, giving me space to roll my suitcase in. The room was small. 2 twin beds with a narrow nightstand between them, a desk in the corner, and a window looking out over a quiet back alley. Not much room to breathe, let alone share. Luca was already settled. Jacket hung neatly in the closet, laptop open on the desk, charger snaking across the floor. "I can see if they can move me," I offered, though the receptionist had already made it clear they were full. "No need," Luca said. "It's just one night, right? We'll survive." He said it easily, but something in his voice made me feel like I'd just stepped into a challenge. He turned back to his laptop and started typing, leaving me to unpack the awkwardness. I placed my bag near the bed farthest from him and sat down, feeling every inch of space we weren't talking about. The silence stretched for minutes. "You still designing album covers?" he asked without looking up. I blinked. "You remember that?" "Of course I do. You did one for that indie band. What were they called? Sweet Static?" "Static Youth." He smiled to himself. "Right. I remember you were always sketching. Something in your notebook. Even during econ." I looked away, embarrassed by how warm that made me feel. He remembered. I tried to focus on setting up my side of the room. Took out my phone charger. Arranged my toiletries in the corner of the shared sink like a line drawn in sand. I avoided his gaze as much as possible, but I felt it. Him. The heat of his presence. The way he moved. The subtle scent of cologne when he passed by to plug in his laptop. I was 22 again, sitting on a roof beside him, wondering what would happen if I leaned in. Except now. We were here. 2 grown men. 1 room. 1 night. No roof to separate us from the consequences. He turned off his screen and lay back, on his bed, arms behind his head, staring at the ceiling. "So," he said casually, "what are the odds we'd end up in the same room after all these years?" I didn't answer. I was too busy making sure my side of the bed didn't touch his. But I knew the odds weren't random. They were fate's cruel joke, and maybe a second chance. The rain started around 8 p.m., gentle at first, then steady and rhythmic against the hotel window. By then, we'd given up on finding a restaurant. Luca had pulled out a local delivery app and ordered Thai without even asking what I liked. "I remembered you liked spicy," he said with a wink. "Or at least you pretended to." I smirked. "I've upgraded since college. I can handle heat now." He raised an eyebrow. "We'll see about that." The banter helped. It chipped away at the awkward silence that had settled between us like fog. By the time the food arrived, we were sitting cross-legged on our separate beds, cartons between us, chopsticks in hand. Steam curled into the air as we ate. "This is actually good," I said around a mouthful of green curry. "Told you," Luca said, his grin cocky. "I have impeccable taste." "In food?" "In most things," he replied, his eyes holding mine a second longer than they needed to. I looked away, pretending to study the hotel art on the wall, a generic print of a mountain at sunrise. Anything to keep from reading too much into that glance. After a few minutes, conversation drifted naturally into old college memories. The parties, the endless nights at the library, the time our entire group got food poisoning after Taco Tuesday and had to email excuses to 3 different professors. "You threw up on someone's shoes," I said, laughing. "Correction," he said, pointing a chopstick at me. "I threw up near someone's shoes. There's a difference. You were still the life of the party. And you," he said, leaning back on his elbows, "were the quiet mystery everyone wanted to figure out." That gave me pause. "I was." He nodded, casual but certain. "You always looked like you were somewhere else, drawing, thinking, listening, never saying too much. It was interesting." "Is that your way of saying I was boring?" I joked. Though my chest tightened slightly, he shook his head. "Not boring, just untouchable." The word hung between us, strange and weighted. I pushed my curry aside, appetite fading beneath the sudden flush rising in my cheeks. Then he said it. Softly, like a memory not meant to be shared. "Do you remember that night? Junior year? After Mark's birthday?" I froze. Of course I remembered. We'd all been drunk, wandering back from the bar. People peeled off in 2s and 3s until it was just me and Luca, walking the long way home. I remembered how he grabbed my hand when we crossed a busy street, how we didn't let go right away. We ended up on the roof of our dorm. I don't even remember how. I just remember the cold air, the view of campus lit in gold, and him sitting beside me, his knee brushing mine. "You leaned in," I said quietly. "And you pulled away," he replied, with no bitterness, just fact. "I wasn't ready," I admitted. "I figured," he said. "Still think about it sometimes." I glanced at him. He was looking out the window, the glow from the streetlight painting shadows across his face. Time had only made him more striking, still effortless, still bold in ways I wasn't. I used to wonder if I imagined it, I confessed. "That night, what almost happened? You didn't." His voice was lower now. "I wanted to kiss you. God, I wanted to." The air changed, thicker, warmer. My heart beat faster. "I wasn't out yet," I said, almost apologetically. "Yeah. I know, neither was I. Not really." He leaned over, grabbing the remote from the nightstand and flipping on the TV, maybe to break the tension, maybe to let it settle. The screen lit up the room in soft blue. "You want to put something on?" he asked. So we don't keep dancing around whatever this is? I gave a shaky laugh. Sure. We ended up watching some classic action movie. Half explosions, half gruff dialogue. It didn't matter. The TV was just background noise. We lay side by side on my bed, a safe inch of space between us, sharing a pillow. At first I was stiff, hyper-aware of every breath, every brush of fabric. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. His shoulder grazed mine. My knee bumped his. Neither of us moved away. I turned my head slightly. He was already watching me. "You know," he murmured, voice just above a whisper. "I always thought you were beautiful. Back then. Still do." My breath caught. It wasn't just flirtation, not the light teasing from earlier. There was something real in it, honest. "You were the first person," I said, "who made me feel seen. Like, you noticed me, even when I didn't want anyone to." He smiled softly, and for a second, I thought he might kiss me again. Instead, he leaned in and whispered, "One night. No regrets?" The words hit me like a match striking flint. I stared at him, at his lips, parted just slightly, at his eyes, dark and searching. And all I could think was this playful? Or was it sincere? And did I care anymore? I didn't answer him. Not yet. But I didn't move away either. We stayed like that, inches apart. The sound of the movie long forgotten, and beneath the flickering shadows on the wall, the past didn't feel so far away. His words hung in the air like a dare, and I didn't know whether to run or lean in. One night. No regrets. I looked at Luca, lying just inches from me, his face calm, but eyes burning with something I hadn't seen in years. Something I might have only imagined back then, hope. My heart thudded in my chest, every beat tangled in a knot of fear and want. I'd waited years for a moment like this, but now that it was here, I felt frozen, unsure if I deserved it. I hesitated. I don't know if I can just pretend this is casual. He shifted, propping himself on one elbow, his voice low and steady. Who said anything about pretending? I looked away, toward the TV. The movie was still playing, some character yelling over gunfire, completely unaware the world had narrowed down to two men lying side by side in a too-small hotel bed. Luca reached out and gently touched my hand. Not gripping, just touching, palm to palm. His skin was warm. I used to replay that night on the roof in my head, he said quietly. Not because of what almost happened, but because of how you looked at me. Like I wasn't just this loud, confident idiot everyone assumed I was. You weren't, I said. You aren't. He smiled, and the vulnerability in his face undid me. I wanted to kiss you so badly, Miles. I told myself I'd do it if you leaned in first. But you didn't. And I didn't want to push. My throat felt tight. I thought I'd screw it up or scare you off or, I don't know, ruin something before it started. And yet here we are, he said, still waiting to find out what it could have been. His hand brushed up my arm slowly, carefully, like he was asking for permission with every inch. Then he leaned in. Not fast, not dramatic, just close enough that I could feel his breath on my lips. I didn't think, I didn't calculate. I just closed the space between us. Our lips met, tentative at first. A question, not a declaration. But when I didn't pull away, he deepened it, one hand sliding to my jaw as he kissed me like he'd been holding that breath for years. I melted into him. His touch was patient, reverent. No rush, just rediscovery. His fingers traced my shoulder, my back, my side, like he was learning me all over again. I responded in kind, slow, searching, savoring the feeling of being wanted like this. Not just physically, but wholly. Every version of me. When our kisses broke, we didn't speak. We didn't need to. We helped each other out of our shirts, lips finding skin in between. His mouth brushed the hollow of my neck, and I exhaled a soft moan I didn't know I'd been holding back. My hands roamed across his chest, through the ridges of muscle and the rise and fall of his breath. Every movement was filled with intent, not haste. We undressed slowly, not like strangers in the dark, but like something ancient finally waking up. I traced the curve of his hip, the softness beneath his confidence. He cupped my face like he was afraid I'd disappear. We moved together, fitting like puzzle pieces that had once been separated by time. There were no scripts, no roles, just instinct and trust. He kissed my shoulder when I trembled. I whispered his name when he lingered in places that made my chest ache with emotion I'd buried for too long. It wasn't just sex. It was something else. Something I'd been too afraid to believe I could have. Afterward, we lay tangled in the sheets, skin against skin, the room humming with silence that didn't need to be filled. My head rested against his chest, and his fingers lazily traced. "Patterns along my spine, is this real?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "It is now," he said. I didn't realize I was crying until he gently wiped my cheek with the pad of his thumb. "I'm sorry," I whispered, embarrassed. "Don't be," he murmured. "I've cried after sex before." That made me laugh, even as I blinked away tears. "You have not." "I have," he insisted. "It was with a guy named Julian who turned out to be married. So, less romantic context." I shook, my head, still laughing, still overwhelmed. "God, Luca, I forgot how easy it is with you." He looked down at me. "Then remember, please." I lifted my head to meet his gaze. "You say that like this doesn't end tomorrow." He paused. "What if it didn't?" I searched his face. "Are you serious?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I didn't come here expecting this. But seeing you again, being near you again, I don't want this to be just a story we tell ourselves later." A what if? I exhaled slowly. I've spent years building walls, around everything, around this. "Same," he said. "But for the first time, I want to tear them down. With you." I didn't reply. I just leaned in and kissed him again, softer this time. Less passion, more promise. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, trading small stories in the dark. He told me about the time he tried to adopt a dog but got rejected because he lived in a no-pets building. I told him about my first freelance gig going viral because a musician I admired reposted my art without knowing who I was. We laughed. We whispered. We touched gently. He told me he used to look for my name in design credits. I admitted I used to search for his on-speaker rosters, at conferences, wondering if I'd ever run into him again. "You still draw?" he asked, fingers brushing my temple. "Yeah," I said. "Not always for work, just when I need to remember who I am." He kissed my forehead. "I want to be someone you don't forget again." I didn't answer. I just held him tighter. Eventually, our words faded into breath. The rain had stopped outside and the world was hushed, like it was pausing to let us stay here a little longer. I didn't know what morning would bring. I didn't know if either of us had the courage to let this be more than one night. But in that moment, in that bed, in his arms, I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to hold back. And as sleep took us, our limbs intertwined beneath the covers. All I could think was, no regrets. The morning crept in quietly, wrapping the room in soft gold light. It slipped between the thin curtains, kissed the edge of the bed, and warmed the space where our bodies still lay tangled under the sheets. I woke first. Luca's arm was draped across my waist, his breathing slow and even. I didn't want to move, not because I was sore, though I was, but because reality was waiting outside the comfort of that bed. And I wasn't ready to face it yet. I studied his face in the early light. The boy I'd known in college had grown into a man, more lines at the corners of his eyes, a deeper crease between his brows. But the same warmth lingered, the same pull. I gently slid out from under his arm and padded to the bathroom. My reflection in the mirror looked different, like something had shifted beneath my skin overnight. I brushed my teeth, splashed cold water on my face, and took a deep breath. When I came out, Luca was sitting on the edge of the bed pulling on his shirt. He looked up, smiled. Small, sleepy. "Morning," he said. "Morning." The word felt fragile, like it could shatter under the weight of everything unspoken. He stood and stretched, his shirt falling into place over his torso. Then he glanced around, found the hotel-provided instant coffee packets, and started fiddling with the little machine near the TV. I watched him in silence, unsure of how to break the quiet. Last night had been so open, so raw, but the sun had a way of drying up vulnerability, leaving only questions. He handed me a cup of coffee a few minutes later. Our fingers brushed briefly. A flicker of something passed between us, but neither of us named it. We sipped in silence. Finally, I said, "So, what now?" He sighed and sat on the edge of his bed, cradling his mug. "I have a flight this afternoon, back to San Diego." I nodded. I'd known he didn't live here, but hearing it said aloud made it more real. "Of course," I said. "The conference?" "Yeah." He looked down at his coffee. "Just a quick visit, in and out." I tried to swallow the lump forming in my throat. "Last night. Was it just—" "No," he cut in quickly. Then softer. "No, it wasn't just anything." I looked at him. He met my gaze. "But it doesn't change the fact that I leave in a few hours. And you've got your life. Here. And that's it?" He looked like he wanted to say more. Maybe he didn't have the words, or maybe he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. "I don't know what this is yet," he said, voice tight. "But I know it wasn't meaningless. I know that much." I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek. He stood and started gathering his things, shoes, charger, jacket. I did the same, folding clothes into my bag without looking up. Every motion felt heavier than it should. At the door, we paused. He looked at me like he might change his mind, like he might stay. But then he exhaled, reached out, and pulled me into a tight hug. His chin rested on my shoulder. "I'm glad it was you," he whispered. My throat burned. "Me too." We pulled apart, not too fast, not too slow. "I'll text you," he said. I nodded. "Yeah. Okay." Then he was gone. Just like that. The room felt colder without him, the bed too wide, the silence deafening. I sat down, coffee forgotten, and let myself feel it. Everything. The tenderness, the ache, the lingering warmth of his touch, the quiet devastation of something beautiful that might never happen again. It had been a dream. One night, soft and golden and real in a way most dreams aren't. But morning had come, and dreams by nature don't last. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, this one wasn't over yet. Life didn't collapse after Luca left. It just settled. Settled into routine. Settled into safe, silent rhythms that used to feel like comfort, but now only felt like static. I went to work, answered emails, sketched out campaigns, ate leftovers, listened to music that suddenly sounded a little too hollow. Everything was exactly the same, and that was the problem. The morning after Luca left, I changed the sheets, took a long shower, and told myself to move on. It was one night, a beautiful accident, that's all. But the lie didn't hold, because every night after, I remembered his voice in the dark. I remembered the way he traced circles on my back as we talked about everything and nothing. I remembered how he made me feel, seen, whole, alive. And now that I knew what that felt like, I couldn't unknow it. Even when I tried, I stopped myself from rereading old texts, from hovering over his social media. I tried to shake off the idea that maybe we could have had more, that maybe we still could. Weeks passed. Spring crept into the city, but I stayed in winter until the postcard arrived. It came tucked between bills and junk mail, a white rectangle smudged with fingerprint ink and the scent of travel. The front was a photo of the ocean at dusk, all dusky pinks and golds. On the back, scrawled in Luca's unmistakable handwriting, "No regrets, but I still think about that night." That was it. No return address, no phone number. Just a sentence and an initial, but it might as well have been a lightning strike. I sat on the edge of my couch and stared at the words until they blurred. The postcard was both a whisper and a challenge, an invitation and a question. He hadn't promised anything, but he also hadn't closed the door. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to stay behind one. That night with him had stirred something I'd buried. Not just desire, not just longing, but courage. The courage to want more, to stop living life in half measures. Maybe it was foolish, maybe it would end in heartbreak, but staying here, doing nothing, that felt like the real regret. I placed the postcard on my desk, right beside my sketchbook. Then I pulled out my laptop, typed in flights to San Diego. Just seeing the search results made my heart race. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the mouse. I could still back out. I could close the tab, chalk the whole thing up to emotion and late-night romanticism. But I didn't. I clicked, chose a weekend, booked the flight. The confirmation email pinged my inbox a moment later. I stared at it, then exhaled a shaky breath. I hadn't realized I'd been holding for 3 weeks. This wasn't some dramatic declaration. I wasn't dropping everything to chase after a fairy tale. I was taking a step, a small one. But it was mine. Maybe we'd grab coffee. Maybe we'd talk about what happened and laugh awkwardly over muffins and bad diner coffee. Or maybe we'd kiss again. Maybe we'd try. I didn't know what was waiting at the end of that flight, but I knew what I was leaving behind. Half-lived days, quiet rooms, and the echo of a love I never gave myself permission to want. As I zipped up my bag a few days later, postcard tucked safely between the pages of my sketchbook, I felt something I hadn't felt since that night. Hope. Not the loud, cinematic kind, but the quiet, steady kind that hums beneath your ribs, the kind that says, one night wasn't enough. And maybe, just maybe, it doesn't have to be. The plane touched down just after sunset. The sky over San Diego was painted in that same soft pink I remembered from the postcard, like it had been waiting for me. I stepped off the jet bridge with my heart thudding against my ribs, fingers curled tight around the strap of my bag. The terminal buzzed with the usual noise, announcements, rolling suitcases, people reuniting with smiles and tears. I scanned the crowd, half afraid I wouldn't see him. And then, there he was. Luca stood near the arrivals gate, hands tucked in his pockets, trying to look casual. But the moment our eyes met, the facade cracked. He smiled, not the charming grin from college, not the flirty smirk from the hotel room. This one was softer, warmer, real. I walked toward him. He didn't move at first, like he couldn't believe I was really there. And then, finally, he stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. No dramatic speeches, no sweeping gestures. Just a look, his Eyes asked the question. Mine gave the answer. We hugged, tentative at first, then tighter. His hand slid to the back of my neck like he had every right to touch me. Maybe he did now. When we finally pulled back, he didn't say, "I missed you," or "I'm glad you came." He just whispered, "You hungry?" I laughed, the sound breaking through the last of my nerves. Starving. We walked out into the warm California evening side by side, something new blooming between us. Whatever this was, whatever it could be, it felt right. And as he reached for my hand, fingers threading with mine, I thought back to that night in the hotel and smiled. One night was just the beginning.